to They Live by Film, a platform dedicated to bringing you film discussion and interviews from around the world. I'm Adam Lundy, and I'm joined by my co-hosts Chris Haskell and Zach Bryant. Hello, guys. How's it going?
Hey, how's it going?
Ooh, happy June. Yeah, the summer has hit. It's been gorgeous in Ireland for the last couple of weeks. Beautiful. Obviously, nowhere near as hot as what you guys will say it is where you are, but for us, it's been beautiful. Not a cloud in
May
the
has
sky.
been kind of weird. Like April was hotter than May's been, but it looks like it's about to start getting hot again.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's always hot in Texas, but
Yeah.
I that's good. I'm glad you've had a beautiful summer so far. Hopefully that continues. I know that I don't know, but I've heard that people in Ireland really like to get outside whenever it's sunny and have a good time. So
Oh, for sure, for sure. There's a concept in Ireland and in England, to be fair, of the beer garden. I don't know
okay.
if you're familiar with the term, but it's basically when a pub has like a garden with some benches,
Yep.
and you basically just go, and instead of sitting inside somewhere, you just sit out at the benches and drink, and
Yeah.
they might have music playing like a band or something. So I'm sure that's in full swing for a lot of people here this weekend.
So, kind of a fun fact here in Virginia, we have a theme park called Busch Gardens, Bush spelled like the beer here.
Anheuser-Busch,
And
yeah.
all the themes in every section is actually European themes. So you go to like certain rides in Italy and everything's done to that. They have an Irish section, a French and German and all that. So since you're saying it's popular there, that's probably the explanation of why they do that. So I thought that was interesting.
That feels like it could easily turn racist.
Very, very much so.
I mean, it's you go to Germany, if you eat over there, you're getting bratwurst. If you go to like Italy, you're getting pasta and stuff. So
Sure.
I mean, stereotypical for sure, but yeah, I mean, it's a nice theme park.
Cool.
I mean, they're just getting like coasters and naming them things like Apollo's Chariot or something like that. So they have them,
Nice.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, before we sort of get into today's films, anyone want to give a shout out to anything that they've sort of seen or bought since we last spoke?
Yeah, I'm just
Sure, I
pulling.
can go real quick. I don't have a whole lot. So recently I had finally gotten into, they've been on my watch list forever. But like during COVID, so I'm actually surprised this movie got a sequel, but I finally watched the movie Becky, which is essentially like Kevin James, not Kevin Williams, Kevin James playing this neo-Nazi who goes after this family home, and a 14-year-old girl like wreaks havoc with all these neo-Nazis. It's fun, it's enjoyable. I ended up watching it because it actually got a sequel this year. Not many theaters got it, unfortunately, but this one's going to have like this one has Sean William Scott playing neo-Nazis, and she's 16, and it's just more like let's wreak havoc on Nazis for a while and watch a 14-year-old girl kill them in like Home Alone style traps. So that was pretty fun. That's actually been really enjoyable as far as like
Awesome.
movies I've seen for this year. And the other one I really wanted to bring up was I wasn't sure, Adam. I know you watched Death Proof when you did your Tarantino thing. Did you end up watching Planet Terror that goes with Death Proof?
I didn't. No, I did not.
Have you seen it?
I've never seen it. I'm familiar with it. With Rose McGowan having a machine gun for a leg, or whatever gun for a leg. I'm familiar with it, but I've never seen it.
Gotcha. Chris, have you seen it?
Oh yeah.
Okay. I rewatched that. I haven't actually seen it since like pay-per-view when I was a kid, when that movie would have first came out. So it was very enjoyable to go back and rewatch. I forgot, like, that one's been kind of interesting because it's always like Tarantino, and as much as they're both making grindhouse pictures, it was kind of fascinating to see how different they took their assignment there. Like I felt like
Yeah.
Tarantino was more like, this is what 70s grindhouse pictures were actually like, and Planet Terror feels more like, it's this idea of kind of what you were expect or what you're promised or something like that. So I thought that was really cool. I will say that I think the sensibilities work better for Rodriguez. Like he just feels a lot more grindhouse with everything because he's like doing everything. Like you can look at the credits, it's like music by Robert Rodriguez, director of photography Robert Rodriguez, and it's like
Yeah.
that feels more true to form, to be honest. So I really enjoyed it. I do like it. I like Death Proof, but I do like this one quite a bit better. So it was kind of fun going back and rewatching it. And I did have something else I watched last night, but I might save that because that might end up being my next pick. So I'll leave it there. What about you, Chris?
Good
Chris,
teaser.
thank
Okay,
you.
so I'll go quick, but there's a few. So first of all, I just saw there was my son had a birthday party with some friends, and for the birthday party they rented out a little tiny screening room, and we saw the Mario movie.
How was
Yeah,
it?
yeah, like how is this controversial at all? Like it's a kids movie. Like even if I know I get people are nostalgic for Mario, but like it's clear from the outset this is a kids movie. Like they didn't make this like a PG-13 nostalgic thing. Like it's a kids movie. And like it's awesome. Like I don't know how people are down on this. Maybe people that grew up with Mario. No, I mean, I have no idea who could be down on this unless you're just in a bad mood. Like
I,
it's it's fun.
well, I know Chris Pratt has quite a few detractors online, so I think a lot of things he does gets a lot of flack regardless. And I know that added in with the
Oh yeah, that's true.
whole he's not Italian thing, though Mario has never been voiced by an Italian as far as
Yeah,
I
like
know.
that's the
But
thing. Like John Leguizamo and Bob Hoskins, like what I don't know. Like it's never those movies have never had Italians, right?
the games don't even have to. I can't remember who the voice actor for the games are, but he's not Italian.
Yeah. So I,
Are
I
But
you
you know,
trying to tell me
we
that
could
Bob
kind of go into
Hoskins
the
is
whole
not
issue
Italian?
with that.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Um, I think I mentioned this a few weeks back on one of the when I had seen some movie that Anya Taylor-Joy in, but I was like, man, she's a super interesting actress. She kills it as Peach. Like, I think I'm developing a little bit of an actor crush on her because I just haven't seen her be bad yet.
And she's going to be Furiosa in the new Mad Max movie, so that's exciting.
That is cool. I don't feels like it might be a stretch for her, but I guess she could probably pull it off. She's a good actor. And then the only thing I'll just quickly let's see, my phone just went down. Shoot. There's one more that I want to talk about real quick, which is okay. So have y'all ever heard of the Shaw Brothers movie called Masters of the Flying Guillotine?
No, I
No.
have not.
Okay, I know, Adam, you went through a big bend. I don't know if that was in the box sets, but there's a sequel, a kind of an unofficial sequel called Flying Guillotine 2. And so the premise of this franchise, I guess, I don't know, or like duology or whatever, is that there's um I don't even know how to fully explain it. There's like a weapon that goes out. Do you remember those little toys called Beyblade? Where you pull
Yeah,
a string and you
Hell
spin
yeah.
around. Okay,
Beyblade
great.
is awesome.
Yeah, okay, great. So it's imagine like a Beyblade that's like a little bit bigger than a human head, okay, on a string. And people that master this weapon, or I mean a chain, and people that master this weapon basically like throw it out and then pull something and a net comes down and decapitates people. And then the head just rolls off.
that's actually pretty cool.
This kind of sounds like the thing that in Kill Bill Volume One. Remember there's that chick who wears a schoolgirl outfit who's part of the Crazy 88? She kind of has something that she like throws out and it has like razors on it that slashes people.
I wonder, I have to go back. I don't remember all the weapons from that. It's been over 10 years since I saw it, but I'm sure it's probably a reference to this.
No, in Tarantino probably is. Yeah.
Yeah, because like this movie is awesome. Like there's so many heads that get knocked off, and it's like so bloody. I love bloody Shaw Brothers stuff. It's fun. They when they go that direction, they usually go big. So this movie's just super bloody and wild, and I had a great time with it. So Flying Guillotine Part Two. I think the alternate title was something awesome too. It was called Palace of Carnage or Carnage Palace or something like that. Um, so yeah,
Something
highly
badass.
recommend that. Yeah. Then the only other thing is we're traveling right now, but when I come home, I just got a notification that Mr. Vampire set is in my inbox in my mailbox, so I can't wait to dig into those films.
that the one from Eureka, or did somebody
Yeah,
else
yeah,
do it?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
There's like four of them,
Yeah, I
three or
wasn't too
four of them.
familiar. I remember when they got announced. I think did they announce another set of like more of them as well or something?
Oh, I
Were
don't
there two
know. I
sets
don't
they
know.
did?
Maybe they did like the movies separately and then a box set. I don't know, but
Maybe.
the one that I the one that I have in is three or four of the films. I've only ever seen one, but I've heard the sequels get just they kind of go like Brian Usna or something and just go crazy. So I'm excited to dig into those.
Nice, nice. Well,
What about
it's a
you,
good
Adam?
thing I went last because what I'm going to talk about is very much tied into the theme of today's episode. So I haven't watched a whole ton because like when we spoke last time, I've just been reading a shit ton of comics, so I just haven't been
Nice.
watching a lot in the evenings. But um, I'll be getting a few films in from Radiance. I'm waiting for. I'm just trying to remember exactly which ones are coming out this month. I think it's Red Sun and the one with Dennis Hopper. I can't remember the name of it now. If I pull up the Radiance website, I'll be able to find it in a couple of seconds. But also, more importantly, is that box set that they announced all the way back when they sort of
Yeah,
first started the Franco Nero box set. That's coming
yeah.
out at the end of this month as well. So I have that
Costa
coming.
Nostra.
Yeah, the Costa Nostra set, which looks really really interesting. Yeah, Red Sun and the Hotspot is the other film.
Mm-mm-mm.
So both of those coming along with the Cosa Nostra set. So I'm looking forward to getting all of those. They should be here by the end of the month. They will coincidentally probably arrive when I am either getting married or I'm a plane to France for my honeymoon. So
Hmm.
I probably won't actually have them in my hands until I get back. I have redirected them to my parents' house so I didn't miss the deliveries while I'm away. Um, so I probably won't have them until the start of July, but looking forward to getting them. All of that stuff has been it's been stuff I've been looking forward to, especially the Franco Nero set. I'm looking forward to sort of diving into those.
Hell yeah.
And then Radiance themselves did an announcement a couple of weeks ago, at the end of May. They did an announcement for two box sets that are going to be coming at some point this year. They haven't given actual release dates yet. They're not available to pre-order yet on the website or anything, but they have announced them and shown off the artwork, and they both look super interesting. The first one is they've titled it "The End of Civilization." It's three films by a guy called Peter Sulkin, who I'm not familiar with, but from what I've been reading, he's like really highly regarded, and the artwork on the box set looks bananas. So
Yeah.
looking forward to seeing those. And then the other one, which definitely piqued my interest, they are like Indicator, they're getting into the film noir box set game with their first announcement, World Noir Volume One. So there's going to be multiple volumes. How many we don't know, but obviously super stoked for that. The cover artist is an Italian film. They haven't announced how many are going to be in it. I don't believe. I think probably three or four, knowing, just going on their previous box sets, they've all been three films. So I assume this is going
Right.
to be three, maybe four if we're lucky. But yeah, looking forward to see what the other films are going to be in that set, where they're going to go. It'd be cool to maybe get something from like different parts of the world. So, one from Italy and then maybe one from like, Asia, like Japan, and then maybe one from, I don't know if there's many film noirs from like South America or Mexico or anything like that, but it'd be kind of cool to see that kind of style of film from different parts of the world. So I look forward to seeing what eventually comes out as part of that.
The the Radiance heads are conspiring to say they're 100% sure there's going to be one Japanese one at least.
That would make
They've
sense. There's a lot of noir influence in Japan.
Yeah, for sure. But I agree. I hope there's from all over. That Peter Silkin set is so I don't know much about him, but people are going crazy for that because Vinegar Syndrome also just announced a Peter Silkin box set, but four movies instead of three. And I don't know if it's the same movies. So there's going to be a Region B from Radiance and then a Region A from Vinegar Syndrome.
Okay,
Um,
interesting.
Apparently this is just like bananas sci-fi, but it's like awesome sci-fi from Poland, I believe.
Yeah, it looks like it's definitely the name looks Polish, or at least somewhere that direction anyway. So Eastern Europe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm excited for those as well. People like flipped out that when that got announced.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Hopefully, we don't have to wait too long for it. Um, it'll probably be towards the end of the year anyway, considering they have that comedy box set coming out in August. So it only really leaves, September, October, November, December. So I'm sure we'll probably get one of them across, different months. I doubt they'll release both of them in the same month.
No, I know we have to jump in, but just real quick, since this is becoming an unofficial Radiance podcast, can you believe that they're already up to number 28 by
No,
Messiah of
it's
Evil?
crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. Like even like just seeing how big sort of my stack has grown
Yeah.
of their films. Like I'm up to date fully like with everything they've released so far. I'm actively keeping up with everything as they come out. Every month I'm just buying whatever's coming out that
Uh-huh.
month,
Uh-huh.
and it's crazy how big the stack has gotten already. So, and I haven't even delved into half of them yet. So I need to actually watch these films rather than just collect them.
Well, perfect segue to today.
For sure, for sure. So we've, as Chris mentioned, with us being an unofficial Radiance Films podcast, we have flirted with this idea of going full Radiance Films for a little while. So, um, we're going to do that today. Really, we're going to talk about two films that have been released by Radiance Films recently on Blu-ray. We picked these ones more so because they just happen to be streaming, both here and in the US where the guys are. So it's just very easy for them to pick them up without having to actually buy them. Obviously, I owned them and I knew Chris owned them because he's doing this YouTube series on Radiance Films, which if you haven't checked out, hit the link in the description to go to our YouTube channel and you can do that. But obviously, I didn't want to make Zach go buy movies just to talk about them. So it would make sense to pick these two because they happen to both be streaming at the moment. So the first one we're going to talk about is a film called Miami Blues. And I'm just going to read you what's on the actual packaging itself. I'm not going to pull this up in the letterbox. So Alec Baldwin stars in Miami Blues as a sociopathic junior who shacks up with a hooker played by Jennifer Jason Leigh and builds a life of domesticity. He juggles with his illegal activities. And on his tail is a dogged cop, Hoke Mosley, played by Fred Ward. And this film was directed by a guy called George Armitage, who I'm not massively familiar with his work. I don't know if you guys have seen anything else by him. Came out in 1990. So Miami Blues. Anyone want to jump in on their thoughts on Miami Blues first?
Chris, do we
Yeah.
have numbers for Miami
Yeah.
Blues?
I just realized I was a bit slow in getting to that, but I did want to call out George Armitage for a second because y'all, I'm assuming that y'all have seen at least one other movie by him. Do you know the movie that he's most famous for? I won't keep you in suspense here. I can.
Going from the what's written here on the blurb, would it be Gross Point Blank?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I haven't seen it. That's the thing. I haven't actually seen
Oh,
Gross
you
Point
haven't
Blank.
seen it.
No, I've
Zach, have
seen
you?
it. I've
What
seen a
movie?
few.
Gross Point Blank with John Cusack?
No, I haven't seen it.
No way.
I haven't
Oh,
seen
Yeah.
it.
okay.
I
Yo,
went through a
that's a bummer.
period about 10 years ago where I watched a couple of like John Cusack kind of comedies. But I hadn't gotten to Gross Point Blank.
Okay, okay. It's fun. It's good. It's I would say it's not anywhere near as off the wall as Miami Blues. It's a little bit more tame, but it's still very fun. So, okay, objectively, this is 9,602.
Too low.
So,
Pretty low.
uh, yeah, I think it's too low. I don't know. Let's see what happens next year now that this release is out, right? And people
Yeah.
are buzzed about it. Because I think it had a release in the US as well from MVD Rewind or
Yeah, that's
something.
what I saw MVD. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And so between those two releases now, let's see if it gets up a little bit more because the movie's amazing. I, I'll just I'll just quickly say this is my kind of film. I love this dark comedy. I love it. This could easily be like a Coen Brothers movie or um, one of these kind of films where they mix in a character that's quite evil or malevolent, but also like very likable. And it's not easy to pull off, but I think he nailed it. So what did y'all think of this?
Oh, I like this a whole lot. Like you mentioned, it's kind of what the kind of thing I like. What I kind of associated it more with though is Elmore Leonard. He was famous for liking to do stuff in Miami. It has that sort of ambiguous character, but it also seems like Fred Ward would have been the type of character he would have liked as like a sinner. Even though he's not in this film. Of course, it has Fred Ward in it, so I love it. But yeah, I had a great time. I think it's a lot of fun.
Elmore Leonard is the Jackie Brown guy,
Yes,
the guy that
yes.
wrote the novel.
Yeah, that 310 to Yuma. He wrote the Raylan Givens
Oh.
novels, which ended up being part of Justified. He was a big guy in mysteries.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great call out.
Yeah, and it's tree for tree. I really like this film as well. I watched it a few weeks ago with my partner, who, as we've discussed on this podcast before, is not a big movie person. But she agreed to watch it with me, and she had a great time, and that's usually a good indication when we both enjoy a movie that a movie's pretty good, because it means that it's pretty sort of universally easy to watch. It's just a fun time. We have this sort of this pretty evil character. He does some shitty things in the whole movie, but the way that the director, and obviously the script kind of balances tone. I think this film really balances tone really well. I hadn't considered the Coen brothers link, with that tone until you said it, but like it does make a lot of sense. It feels very 90s, but the fact it was only made in 1990, maybe it's even a little bit ahead of its time. With the tone that it has, but it's a super fun film. Even all the shitty things that happen, it's balanced somewhere else along the way to make it not like a downer film.
Yeah.
It's a great watch. The color scheme as well it was just really beautiful. This, I don't know how, it's from 1990, so I doubt the print was in bad shape or anything, but the scan that's on the Radiance Films release, and I don't know how that compares to the one on the Criterion channel. This is where it's streaming at the moment, but the scan looked really, really good. The colors popped, and yeah, it's just a super fun film.
It looked good on my end. I watched on Criterion.
That's good.
I think like I don't know if this is the best, but in my mind, one of the best ways to like intro this film in terms of tone and like just what to expect is the opening sequence, right? So Alec Baldwin walks off of a plane, sees a mother like not paying attention and steals luggage, right? And I forget how, somehow shuts the kid up. Forget if he gives them a toy or something, but somehow the kid doesn't say anything. Takes the luggage, walks out. There's a Hare Krishna trying to like sell him or panhandle or ask for money or whatever, and he breaks his finger and somehow kills the guy. So in the first like minute and a half, he's stolen luggage from a stranger and somehow magically killed this guy just by breaking his finger. And he's just not fazed by any of it. Like he just keeps walking, and he's not even like worried about running away from the police or whatever. He just runs or he just walks out and like gets in a car and goes. And I was like, man, this is gonna work. Okay, I'll like buckle in, like see what happens from here.
Yeah, and his character is super interesting. The main character played by Alec Baldwin. He's an interesting character because he does so much sort of weird stuff that you wouldn't anticipate, a mastermind criminal to do. He doesn't really seem to give a shit that like people know him or see him do things. He's just kind of like, whatever. I'm just going to do this. I need to do it. It is what it is. You can see me all you want. That's cool. And it reminds me, and I think I've used this quote before to describe characters on this podcast, but it reminds me of a quote from an Irish film called The Guard that Don Cheadle uses to describe Brendan Gleeson's character, where he says, I can't tell if you're really motherfucking dumb or really motherfucking smart. And I think that sums up Alec Baldwin's character in this film as well. I can't tell if he's just like an absolute mastermind or if he's like just that dumb that like he just doesn't give a shit. So like he just becomes like just nonchalant about everything.
Yeah.
I think the way I kind of read him was he is, when it comes to criminal stuff, he's smarter than the average person would be at that. But like one thing I liked, probably my favorite scene in the movie was the one where Fred Ward's character as a detective comes in and has dinner with them because he's investigating what happened, and he reads him incredibly quickly. Like it's almost instantaneous.
Yeah.
Because he's it's almost like he's a typical criminal who's punching above his belt. Like he thinks he can do all this when you're kind of saying he's not going to be able to get away with this forever because, and like he saw, like Fred Ward's character kind of sizes him up in like seconds of who he is, and it suspects a lot from him because of the small interactions they have.
You were talking just really quick on that point. You were talking about was it Leonard Elmore, right?
Leonard, yeah, Elmore Leonard, Elmore Leonard.
Elmore Leonard, sorry. So this guy, Fred Ward's character, is also from a novel. He's a recurring character in novels as well.
Oh,
right?
is he? Okay.
Yeah, he's what's the author's name? Hold on, let's see how quick I can get here. His character is called Hoke something, Hoke Mosley, I think. Right?
Hook Mosley, yeah.
Yeah,
Sounds like a
and
detective novel name.
yeah, exactly. He's let's see, written based on Miami Blues. Yeah, Charles Willeford. Here we go.
Okay.
So he's a series of novels featuring hard-boiled detective Hoke Mosley. So it made me really interested in seeing. I haven't heard of the other novels. You may have. Let's see, Cockfighter, The Woman Chaser, The Burnt Orange Heresy are the ones they call out.
Sound
You
like
should
crime novel names to me.
totally. You should check out his Wikipedia page, Zach. I think the fact that you like manly pictures, this dude looks pretty awesome.
Okay.
But Charles Willeford, yeah. So I think this is one of these like in a weird way, I think this is actually meant to be a movie about Fred Ward, or at least where Fred Ward's the lead. But it's just so hard to know that because Alec Baldwin totally steals the movie.
Yeah, and it's I don't, like I said, I don't know the intention. I'm sure it's a little bit different in the novel, but like, how long is it? He's knocked out for like 20 minutes of the movie. It feels like at one point. So he's kind of, I wasn't even sure if he was coming back much after that, and then he kind of becomes a little bit more central once Alec Baldwin kind of like comes into his motel room and steals his money and his badge and everything else.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because we were talking obviously about Mad Max earlier. It's Fred Ward is actually the highest billed person on this movie. It's Fred Ward and then Alec Baldwin, and it just kind of feels like Mad Max Fury Road,
Yeah.
where Tom Hardy is first billed, but really it should be Charlize Theron. So
Yeah.
it feels kind of like that a little bit. Which I'm wondering. Like, I'm not gonna lie. I can't say I'm too familiar with the career of Fred Ward. But like, would that have been right for this time period? Would Fred Ward have been a big name or bigger name than Alec Baldwin?
He'd
Because I
been a
don't know when Alec
character
Baldwin
actor
got
his
big.
whole
So
career. Of course, I think his greatest role was playing it as Earl Bassett in Tremors, but I won't get into that.
okay, yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but no, he had been a character actor, a pretty big one during the '80s. I don't know if he really had many like major roles though. Chris might be able to answer that better.
No, I think it's more a matter of the fact that like, so Alec Baldwin, okay, let's look at him really quick because I
yeah. I'm
think
just
this
curious. When
is
did he blow up? That's still
exactly.
wondering.
Yeah, exactly. Because Fred Ward just did Shortcuts, which was a critical darling, I think the same year. What year did Miami Blues come out?
1990.
Yeah, so he was in Tremors, and then what year was Tremors?
90.
Yeah, so he was in Tremors and Shortcuts at the same time. So he was in like a
Oh,
box
big
office hit,
movies.
yeah, and then also like a critical darling. He was just kind of all over the place, right? And then so Alec Baldwin had done Hunt for Red October the same year, which is pretty big, obviously. He had a smaller role in, well, not medium role in that, I guess. And then let's see.
Everybody played in Rocket Boys.
Yeah. He did Married to the Mob 2 years before. He had a tiny role in Beetlejuice. So he was around, but I don't think he had fully like
Not
broken
the name
out.
he is sort of these
Yeah.
days. Okay.
And then it was after Miami Blue, he was in a Woody Allen movie, Alice, which was kind of a under, but then
Oh,
two
I know
years
that
later,
one. Yeah.
yeah, but then 2 years later he did Glengarry Glen Ross. And I feel like after that he was
That's
a
when he
lead.
blew up. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
his breakout role. Really sure. What did he win an Oscar for? Like a 10-minute scene or something?
I mean, yeah, honestly, like he probably deserved it. Like maybe it's the writing that helped him, but that role, he was awesome. And having a career in sales, that's like the Bible of sales. Like
Always be
everybody's seen that
closing.
movie. Always be closing, yeah.
Yeah.
But
I
Fred
do want to
Ward,
know
yeah.
while we're
Huh.
talking about Alec Baldwin, is it just me or is the younger and more attractive he is, the sleazier he looks? Like I feel like he was so much more sleazy in this. Like you look at him, you're like, huh, yeah, he seems like the type of guy to be a criminal.
I think he was
Um,
picked perfectly for the role.
yeah, he pulls off the tone, right? I mean,
For sure.
oh yeah,
Absolutely, he does.
I know what Fred. No, Fred Ward was bigger. I forgot about that. He had a big role in the right stuff, like 2 years
Oh
before
yeah, yeah.
or 7 years before. But yeah, so he was a known. He was definitely a known entity at this point, and he was in Escape from Alcatraz in a pretty big role. So yeah, he was probably bigger at this point for sure.
Which this might be one of the few movies where he had such a major leading role, and it would be something if he has it and Alec Baldwin really is the main character throughout it.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah, and Tremors was
When I
awesome. I don't know.
first when this sort of release first came out, this is like a really random aside, but when this release first came out and I saw like the names of who was in it, I was like Fred Ward, and I was like, is that the dude who played Robin in Batman and Robin with Adam West? I was like, that's so random if he's in this movie. Then it turns out that's Burt Ward, so I was wrong.
That would have been a good.
You'd have blew my mind if that was true. I'd be like, really?
I know, I know, yeah. I was so disappointed when I found out it wasn't him. I was like, damn, I really wanted to see a movie but grew up with like an older guy who played Robin in the Adam West Batman series.
That's really funny.
So let's
Um,
give a shout out to Jennifer Jason Leigh. We haven't really mentioned her.
yeah,
Yeah, it
Probably
is
one of
her
like the
collection
all-time
title.
great character actors, like in terms of like for especially for females. You know, she's always just great, and she's never like the star, but like she's always good.
One of the things I really liked, it was like a small thing because I don't know how long she'd really been in the business at this point. I assume not very long by the time this movie came out. But one of the subtle things I really appreciated, and I can say this from experience, she has a major Southern accent, like in everything she does.
mm,
Uh, but when you first see her, she doesn't have much of one. Like it's kind of somebody who's trying to hide it. And when she's at home
Mm.
with Alec Baldwin, it comes out so much more. And I was like, that's very true to life. When you're out, you a lot of people will try to hide it or they'll try to lessen the impact of it. But then when you're comfortable at home, it comes out like so much more. I just thought that was like a really cool detail that they didn't really like point out at, but I thought was interesting.
That is super interesting, and I would have never caught that really because I don't have the sort of cultural awareness, you know, around that. So that's really interesting. If that is sort of an active choice, that you know, an active creative choice that was made, and that's really cool and really subtle.
yeah, she was a kid actor, I guess. She's in stuff going all the way back to 1976. So she was she
Really?
was she was around Hollywood, I guess. She was in uh, The Magical World of Disney briefly. She was in The Waltons for one episode.
Because you
Uh,
kind of had that Kurt Russell childhood thing where they're in stuff, but they're not like a major star until later. Is it kind
yeah,
of
I
that
think
sort of
so.
thing?
She had a small role in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and then she was in. You remember Fun City put out that box set of all the TV. What's it called? Anyways, all the made-for-TV movies.
I
Y'all
think I
remember that?
remember that. Yeah.
Primetime Panic, it was called.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one of the movies was Girls of the White Orchid, where she plays a girl that gets like basically kidnapped into a sex trade and ends up in Japan and has to have a boyfriend like come rescue her. She was awesome in that movie though. Um, and then she was in The Hitcher. So yeah, she's been around.
I forgot
Um,
she was in The Hitcher. I actually forgot all about that.
yeah, yeah, you're right. She has just been like in movies as a lead. Like she was one of the female leads in Backdraft, but that's not really who people remember in that movie. Um, yeah, she's always done some cool work. Oh, she
And
was in
she's always been
Shortcuts as well.
good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, she
Um,
always just seems to like again, she's not someone who's like ever the lead, you know, she just kind of shows up in stuff and like she's always good. So whenever you see her, she's like, oh, it's Jennifer Jason Leigh. She's good. She was in she even had like a really small role in the Twin Peaks sort of
She did.
re sequel, whatever we want to call it. You know, she was good in that. I remember the first time I saw her was in that Christian Bale movie where he's like really skinny. Um,
the
The
Mechanist
Machinist.
or Machinist?
yeah, yeah, yeah. She's in that with him. And I remember that was the first time I'd ever seen her in anything, and I thought she was just really, really good. Like from then on, if ever like I see her in a cast list, I'm like, oh, I don't need to worry. She's gonna be good.
That's cool.
She was probably, I wouldn't even say, well, between her and Walton Goggins were probably the best parts of Hateful Eight as well.
Yeah, for sure. She was really, really good in Hateful Eight. Definitely one of that was just a great character performance in general from like most of the cast, if not all the cast. But yeah, she was definitely one of the stars of that film.
Yeah, I'm just scrolling through. Her career is awesome. She kind of reminds me, the roles she takes reminds me a little bit of like Elijah Wood or somebody who's like just seems to really be drawn to interesting roles.
I know before Hateful Eight, I think I remember her saying she was actually about to quit acting. So I don't know if she's done anything since then, since Hateful Eight. I think she has.
Yeah.
She was about to quit at one point.
She played Lady Bird Johnson in LBJ. That was a big
Gotcha.
role. Um, let's see, what has she done recently? Yeah, I mean, she was in Possessor, man. She was in your buddy's Cronenberg's son's movie.
That's right. She was. I forgot she was in that. She
I
has
haven't seen that.
yeah, it's good.
And she was the lead in Fargo, or she was one of the leads in Fargo, the TV show. Is that right?
I've only seen the first season. I don't remember her in the first season. She had to have been one of the later ones.
I think that show became kind of like an anthology, right? Where different every
Yeah, every
season had a
season's a
different
little
story.
different. The only one connected to the movie directly that I'm aware of is the first season.
Wait, is this right? Has it been going for 9 years?
Well, it's been on a break for a long time. Like I think they
Oh,
broke during COVID.
okay.
So they don't come out with seasons every year. It's like every couple years or 2 or 3 years. Yeah.
2015 and then 2017 and then 2020 and then now there's one coming out this year. Okay. She's in this upcoming one. That's what it is.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I might check it out then if she's on
So
it.
yeah, she's still working. Um, yeah, it's fun when I think this is what people talk about with Hammer movies a lot. They're like, it's fun to watch, Vincent Price chew up scenery or some of these guys. This one, I think this is one of those movies that fits into that category for me. It's just fun to watch. Like it's almost like a play, right? You're just watching three talented people just do well at good dialogue, right?
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's hard to pull off having like a likable sleazy character that is that fun to watch. Like, I mean, you look at like his little crime spree he commits, like I guess it's sort of in the middle of the film. Probably one of my favorites is when he stops the dude from mugging the woman near a cop. And he's like, go get him. And then she's like, oh my God, thank you so much. And then he steals her purse. And
Yeah, that's a great scene. Once he kind of starts moonlighting as a terrible police officer, that really kind of kicks it up a gear for enjoyment factor, I think, as well, just watching all the shit he gets up to while pretending to be a cop. Yeah, it's just a fun film. Like you said, it's just great watching people bounce off each other, but it has a really interesting plot in terms of like just the ideas of places it goes. Like, the idea that this criminal would like pretend to be a police officer, but like not actually but actually think he's doing good as well at the same time. He's not doing it to like, move drugs or something. It's not like he's gone like undercover like The Departed or something. It's still played for laughs.
Yeah.
There's still a sort of tongue-in-cheek irony underneath it all.
Yeah, because like everything he does is like would be too far for like a lot of corrupt cops. Like the one where he shoots the guy, he's like, don't move or I'll shoot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very fun film, and it's also fun. Like as much as it's fun watching him do all this stupid, crazy stuff, it's also fun watching watching it all fall down as well.
Yeah.
He's still sleazy and bad enough that like we don't feel bad that he's eventually going to get thwarted, and we're looking forward to seeing how that just plays out. I think the ending is really good. Pretty much like from when he enters the pawn shop. And has that thing happen to him which I did not expect. I don't know if any of you guys saw that coming. What happens to him in the pawn shop. That was pretty wild. Even though the front artwork kind of spoils it, if I looked hard enough at the artwork of the front of the disc, I would have seen it happening. But yeah, it's just a really fun film. I think that's really the best way we can sum it up. When I sort of introduced it on the last episode, I had said that when I had read a review of this, someone had described it as heat if both the cop and the criminal were terrible at their job. And I think that is a funny way of looking at it. I don't know if it's entirely accurate, because I don't think that they're entirely terrible at their jobs, considering one gets away with it for so long and the other knows what's going on. He just needs to try and find the right way to bring them down. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd say they're terrible at their jobs, but it's fun watching them, just sort of watching all the events just sort of just fall out.
Well, and there's kind of this sense of inevitability with Alec Baldwin's character. Like, as much like you're like, there's just no way. Like, he has painted himself in such a corner.
Yeah,
he has no chance of getting away with this, and that like throughout the whole thing. It's like there's no chance here. Like, he's not getting away with any of this. But I think that also allows them to, it is a lot of this advancing, like necessarily advancing. I mean, it's a pretty long montage of him just committing like crimes, but it's like, yeah, we might as well have fun with it since we know how this ends. Like, we might as well like drag our feet a little bit so we can have fun with it, and then go from there when we know what happens at the end. Unless they just went out of like completely left field. It was like this ends one way.
Zach, I'm going to ask you a really tough question.
Okay.
It's not going to be fair to you completely. Raising Arizona comes out 3 years before this.
Okay.
Which is not the same movie for sure, but similar a little bit, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Is Alec Baldwin a better choice for this role in Miami Blues, or Nick Cage? Who would play this role better?
I mean, this sounds like a cop-out answer, but I don't think I can see either one in each other's movie and it work as well as it does. Like, Alec Baldwin still has like this, like almost like this intimidation to him, like especially like when you're at like the dinner scene and he's playing this person who is, you start seeing more that he is this hardened criminal. Like, this isn't like Nick Cage, who plays this really petty criminal who doesn't even really realize half of what he does. Mm-hmm. I don't think they can play in each other's movies and it be as successful. So yeah, I would go with that as much of a cop-out answer as that is.
I think that shows a lot of maturity and growth on your part. I was assuming you were going to say always Nick Cage. No, I fully agree. I think as much as I would love to see Nick Cage ham it up in this role, I think Baldwin nails it. Like, I think he's great in it.
He's just a sleazier guy. Like, I think that makes a difference.
It's true.
I think he has a bit more of a charisma about him as well. I think Cage is just a bit too kooky to be charismatic in the same way that Alec Baldwin is.
Yeah, I would say that's fair. Like, even like when he talks about doing Raising Arizona, he's like, I want to look like a bird. And I was like, that's a Nick Cage thing. He's like, I'm gonna look like a woodpecker. And it's like, okay, go for it.
Cool. Any final thoughts on Miami Blues before we move on?
No, just watch
Adam,
Point Blank. Go ahead. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, Adam, you wanted me to buy a Radiance film. I'm probably gonna do it now. So congrats to you.
You better get it before the limited edition sells out. There's only 3,000 copies of all these
films. I need to. I'll probably pick it up next payday.
Yeah. No. Get the standard so you don't feel the pressure to get the slips.
It's not a bad idea.
Yeah,
I mean, not the slips, but the whatever they do for the limited, the booklets. Or what is the difference between the limited and the standards? I don't actually know. Is it the booklets?
I don't think it's even that. It's that they don't have the card thing, that covers kind of half the cover. They don't have that, and they don't. They're not in that nice sort of Criterion style Blu-ray case. I can't remember what they call it. The ones where it's like
borrow or something.
Something like
Scanavo,
that.
Yeah. Scanavo.
Yeah, they're in like they're in that generic Blu-ray case that people in our line of business shudder at.
Yeah, I was about to say I was like, I don't need the weird J card thing, but then you were like, it's gonna be put in the Amaray case, and I'm like, ugh.
To be fair, it's a clear Amaray, so it's not as bad. It's not like it's a blue Amaray. So that's like I refuse to buy anything in a blue Amaray case. Especially
since like in the UK, you guys have that big thick like Amaray Blu-ray case, right? Like you have that like massive sized one.
It depends. It depends on the release. Sometimes you can get the thinner ones. Sometimes it's thicker. It really just depends on the release. But I wouldn't know too much about that because I refuse to buy them. Luckily, most of the boutiques use clear ones. One time, Indicator sent me a release in a blue one, and I nearly gagged because
It was like they had a shortage for a while. Like Arrow
yeah.
had to do some in blue because they had a shortage of the other ones.
There was a manufacturing shortage on the clear ones, so there was a lot of companies having to send them out in blue because they didn't have a choice. And I got a Fritz Lang one from Indicator sent out in blue, and it still makes me sick to this day. I should just go buy, a cheap film in a clear case and just swap it over at some point. But
Oh, I've done that, yeah. Because like I have a secondhand store where they have like barrels of just like cheap Blu-rays, and I'm like, I need a new case. Like, so I have broken cases, and I'll be like, yeah, I'll buy that and replace it and then sell it back.
Yeah, anything that has a clear case will do. Cool. Well, look, we'll move into the next film that we're going to talk about, which is a French film from 1968, but was lost for like over 40 years due to reasons that I'm sure Chris can shed a bit more light on. He touched on it last week, but I think Chris knows a bit more about the background of this than I would. It's called A Woman Kills by a director called Jean-Denis Bonin. And just to give you sort of brief synopsis again from the actual Blu-ray itself, executioner Louis Gilbeau develops a relationship with the officer investigating a series of prostitute murders, and she soon learns Louis may not be who he says he is. So, pretty straightforward sort of plot description there, because this film was pretty light on sort of traditional plot. Fuck it, go on, Zach. Tell us what you think. let's just go with that, because there's no point doing sight and sound stuff. This film was lost for over 40 years. It's not going to be any, or they shoot pictures or anything like that. So
yeah, it's not on the list.
Yeah, it wasn't going to be. It only got discovered again recently, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
so
exactly, yeah.
So see, I hate it because I think people are going to start thinking I go into these movies like any French New Wave film wanting to hate it, and I swear I don't. I really don't. I really didn't like it. I just like when you mentioned light on plot, like the plot is what made me interested. And I was like, oh, that doesn't really exist here. Oh, it's just more of static shots of, oh, we're going to watch this woman undress. And I was like, it's a 68-minute film and we're wasting so much time. And I was like, it feels so long. So yeah, that's kind of where I ended up on it.
Understandable. Chris, what do you think of that?
Okay, it would be very difficult for me not to like this movie because I like the origin story of it and like the concept of it so much that like I kind of already made my decision before I went into it. I will say I didn't rate it 5 stars. I forgot exactly what I rated it. I could check.
It was 4. It was 4 out of 5.
4, okay, yeah. And I went in giving it 5 in my head before even seeing it because Jean-Denis Bonin is he was a surrealist. He was in that artist scene with Buñuel, and he was in like he was in the whole scene that he knew the same producers as all the French New Wave folks, and he liked to he was very edgy, like he liked to push the boundaries of filmmaking. So like a few years before this, he made a short that got banned, which just showed people eating feces at a cafe and like ordering it off a menu and like smearing it on their face, and he did it all as like a laugh, like he was trying to make a point about consumerism or something, I don't know, whatever. So he was like a protest filmmaker, had his stuff banned, made this movie. The producers of a lot of the French New Wave stuff that put this out all over the world bought the film before and financed it before he made it, just because they were interested in the plot, just like you said, Zach. And then they saw it and they didn't know what to do with it, so they shelved it. They didn't know how to market it. So I just like the fact that there's this sort of protest filmmaker doing things his own way, making a movie about trans woman serial killer, copycat serial killer, making a police detective a woman in the 60s. Like there's a lot of stuff in like the description of this movie that I thought was cool. If I were to watch it again, it might even fall down another half star. So I think it's probably, in my memory, it probably lands at about a 3.5, because I don't think the execution was as good as I wanted it to be. But I just love like the backstory, and I love the character of Bonan, and I like the film was found. So that's kind of, I can't ever say that I didn't like it, but the execution wasn't where I wanted it to be. It didn't match the image of it in my head. I'll say that.
So I'm kind of falling similar to you, Chris, and I'll explain this a little bit. I'll say first off, I didn't know anything how this film was going to look or anything like that when I sort of recommended this. Zach, when I read the description, I thought, great, finally a French New Wave film that Zach might like. Happy days. So I didn't realize what this film was going to be like when I went into it. So I'll just put that out there. I wasn't trying to stitch you up or anything. I thought this would just be a cool film to watch. So I totally understand people not liking it. Now that I've seen it, I totally get it. For me, I rated this 4 stars, but it's a 3.5-star film that got bumped up to 4 stars purely on the basis that I don't think I've ever seen anything like it before.
Mhm.
And I found it just an incredibly interesting piece of filmmaking on that basis, that I don't know if I've seen anything that kind of brings together this very sort of grimy, cheap DIY look, but with a fuck ton of atmosphere.
Mhm.
And it's indebted to a lot of things, and I'm sure we'll touch on this stuff. It owes a lot to Peeping Tom. It owes a fair bit to Psycho, with the twist and stuff. So it owes some stuff to some filmmakers, which that's French New Wave. French New Wave filmmakers owe a lot to a lot of filmmakers, and it does owe some stuff to there. But what I was trying to figure out what it was that made this film kind of stand out or be different. Like, yeah, the sort of very, very DIY cheap feel of the film was interesting. The plotting, or I say plotting with inverted commas, that was interesting. What I ended up realizing what this film was, just from like a plot standpoint, in terms of like how the film is shown to you and how it unfurls. It's like a Dario Argento movie without any plot, and it's just all the mood. So it's just all the mood of Argento, or even I forget, Brian De Palma. It's like Brian De Palma or Dario Argento. This is their movies if you gutted all the plot and just left the basics and all the mood. And that's where I kind of left the film. Sort of I just ended up finding the film interesting because that's how I was looking at it. I was looking at it in that way. I wasn't looking at it like, they were being cheap or the script was bad or anything. It just felt like a filmmaker who just wanted to generate the mood of kind of serial killer slasher movies, and it just wasn't too fussed about the plot, because it didn't really matter. It was just all about the mood, if that makes sense.
No, I actually don't disagree with you at all, because one of the things that bumped it up for the score I think I gave it 2.5, was actually just because the POV stuff was like really well done, especially for time. Like that's very impressive POV work for 1968, when the most famous example is not going to come out for like 10 years. We can go a little bit, maybe say 6 years if we're going to count Black Christmas. But yeah, so I thought that was really neat. But there is a voyeurism to the film, just as you mentioned, with Palma and Argento both really like voyeurism. So yeah, I feel that. I do. I could use a little plot with it, but yeah.
Well, this is what I mean. This is what I totally get people not enjoying it, because if this film was any way less interestingly made or something, if there was something that made this film very kind of so I'll sort of reverse my point. There's nothing about this film that's cookie cutter. So the fact that pretty much everything it does is interesting or experimental in one way or another is what makes me maybe not enjoy it as much, but at least interests me, if that makes sense. So this was definitely more of a film that got its stars because of its interest levels as opposed to its entertainment or enjoyment levels.
Yeah.
If I was rating this film purely on how much I was entertained or how much I enjoyed it. Let's just say if I compare it to like, if we compare it to like Halloween or The Bird of Crystal Plumage, something like that, in terms of like an entertainment level, then it's not going to stack up. It's going to be like a 2-star movie. But what bumped it up for me was just how uncookie cutter everything in this movie was. Everything it did, it strived to be interesting. There's so much interesting camera work in this film. That shot where it's shooting from like below the bed as the people are sort of writhing on, and it's not even it's like on the springs of the bed. It's not even like on a mattress or anything.
Yeah.
That is so like, who thinks of that? There's just so much stuff in this film that's just so interesting, just from a filmmaking point of view. Some of the creative decisions just super interesting. Then there's other stuff that looks cheap as hell, so it kind of balances out in a way. But yeah, there was just nothing in this film that was cookie cutter for me, and it just made me super interested in the film itself, as opposed to being entertained by it. And that's where it got its start from me. If I was ranking this on a film, a film experience, just as a watcher, then no, it's not a great film, but it's a really interesting film. I don't think anyone can sort of say that.
Yeah, that's probably a better way of saying what I was trying to say. The concept, the idea, what they were doing, even some of the technical side, worth preserving, right? Super interesting. Probably not a film that you'd watch time and time again.
No, I don't think it warrants much rewatch. Even with the film even being kind of slippy plot wise, because there's so little exposition and stuff, it can be easy to get a little bit lost. What's actually happening, which for a film that's just over an hour long, that's never really a great sign if you're having trouble following the plot of the film.
Yeah, I watched it with the commentary to hopefully get more insight into that. And
Oh, okay.
the commentary is more about the groundbreaking work of this like feminist auteur,
Okay,
as
interesting.
opposed to like necessarily just about the plot. So it paints a lot of really interesting context on Bonan and
Oh, so this was a female director, was it?
no,
Oh, sorry.
yeah,
Male
male
feminist.
director,
I was
male
wondering, yeah.
feminist. Yeah.
Oh, I get
Uh,
what you mean. Sorry, my apologies.
no, it's okay. Just in the fact that like you said, we've talked about like a lot of this stuff was in, I mean, it's okay if we spoil it, right? This movie
Yeah.
doesn't really matter, right? Yeah. So the whole plot is just around there's a female serial killer who dies by execution, but there's the same type of murders that keep happening and they're kind of confused by that, right? So this female police detective comes on and tries to crack the case, um, and winds up falling in love with the executioner, right? Who performed the execution.
Mhm.
And it turns out that the executioner is a guy who dresses up as a woman and commits these new copycat murders, right? So that's sort of I mean, I'm sure, there's more to it, but that's kind of the general plot, right? That's the reveal at the end.
Yeah, well, there isn't really more to it. We're not really given much in terms of like motive and stuff. There's no Norman Bates monologue at the end
Yeah.
explaining why. But yeah.
And I think that the idea of number one, that there was a female police detective and they didn't make a big deal of it. They just kind of made it that way, like assuming that this could happen, was fairly progressive. Not controversial, just progressive. And then the fact that just the entire twist around this being somebody who dresses as a woman and they're
Well,
being so casual.
this is what helped kind of make an Argento link with me, because that's a big part of Deep Red. That the fact that there's that dynamic between the male and female leads, and the female lead is a lot more clued in and kind of knows what she's doing, as opposed to the male lead, which traditionally it'd be the other way around. The woman would always be the sidekick, or the assistant or whatever. Um, that's what kind of helped me form that link with Argento, just because of that famous kind of dynamic in Deep Red.
Yeah. I think the Argento link is actually awesome. I didn't think about it until you said it, but that nails the tone, I think, a lot. And it's funny because Argento's known for these really highly convoluted plots.
Yeah, like he's on the other spectrum of that. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
there's a
there
lot
it
going
is.
on. I just don't know what it is.
we need to make a slasher spectrum, and on one end it's a woman kills, and on the other end it's like Deep Red or The Bird with the Crystal Plumage or something. Just in terms of how convoluted the plot is, they are completely two ends of the spectrum.
Like a story point spectrum or something. Like how many?
Yeah. Like this, and this is something I find interesting with A Woman Kills as well, though, just in terms of, like, we're talking about how it links to other filmmakers, but as I mentioned, this film was lost for like over 40 years. Nobody had seen it because people basically just didn't want to work with this director.
Yeah.
So, but like, there's a lot of stuff in this film that you see it and you're like, well, shit, that kind of links into stuff that came afterwards. We talk about the POV stuff, that's just so, indebted with, the slasher movies in general is just something that, you do a lot of POV with. Halloween obviously made it famous. Now, obviously, you could say that Peeping Tom was probably the first to do, a semi POV. It's kind of different in Peeping Tom because we're seeing it through his camera as opposed through like the eyes of the killer, like they did in Halloween. But this film does it. You have these sort of gender role, gender politics, whatever we want to call it, this blurring of genders. We have this, in this film, which, yeah, okay, we had it in Psycho, but you didn't really see it happening until, stuff like Brian De Palma was making, and, more filmmakers in the 80s, look at like Sleepaway Camp and stuff like that. It became more of a thing in the 80s, this kind of, a lot of filmmakers are making stuff that sort of blurred gender lines. So there's a lot of stuff in this film that seems like it should have been influential, but because the filmmaker was basically censored, they couldn't have their stuff released. It couldn't become influential. And, this feels like something where it feels like a missing link. The way they talk about that in Evolution, there's like a missing link.
That's a great,
this
love
kind of
that
film
metaphor.
Yeah, this feels like kind of like a missing link film. Like people should be like pointing to this as like as a reference point, of like experimental horror filmmaking or whatever, but they couldn't because nobody could see it. So I just find that really interesting, what kind of alternative history could have played out with film if this film had have been released. And again, I'm not saying that this film is like the most important film ever made, or that it's like an all-time great movie, because again, we've spoken about this. I don't think the film itself is actually all that good. It just has a lot of interesting things in it. But it would be interesting to see an alternative history where this film does come out and it is successful. Would we have started seeing stuff earlier? A lot of, the stuff that we talk about with slasher films and serial killer films that we see in this film and we see in later films, but not for like 10, 15 years. Would we maybe have seen them earlier, with how influential French filmmakers were back towards the American filmmakers? It just ended up being a cycle, really. The French were inspired by Americans, but then the Americans became inspired by the French, in reverse. So, would we have seen that influence as well? I guess we'll never know, obviously, but it's just an interesting thing to think about.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. That's fascinating. I mean, yeah, it also kind of goes to show like film, like inspiration can come from so many places, right? Like the idea that there's this tiny subgenre of films of uh serial killers that play with gender. There's not a lot of them, but there's enough of them out there that it's an interesting idea to a group of folks, and you wonder, like, were they inspired by each other, or did they just kind of come up with this idea by themselves? Like it's an interesting twist, because in addition to like having a reveal at the end, you also don't think about the idea that it could be somebody from a different gender in this way. So maybe it's like maybe it's an idea that people come to organically, or maybe it's watching these other movies. But it's interesting that there's like this small body of work that where they're all doing a similar thing, right?
Yeah, I suppose it all comes down to what's in the zeitgeist from like a societal point of view and a political point of view and stuff. We're talking about the 60s, 70s. So this is like, obviously feminism has been going on since I think like the 40s mainly was when it started to really spring up. But, we're talking about the height of it in like the 60s and 70s when feminism is becoming a real hot topic,
Right.
in society and in politics. So I think it's certainly possible for a lot of people to have the same idea based on what's going on in the world right now. And well, I think we can say factually because like nobody's seen this movie, so
Right.
we can't say that people were inspired by this film, to similarly explore blurring of genders because nobody saw this film. So this ends up being a way of proving that people can have different ideas, at the same time, and it's more to do with what's going on with the world as opposed to always being about copying one another.
Yeah, and I think that's a thing we talk about POV. I think this film was, from what I can tell, was shot in 16 millimeter, which is a
Yeah,
much
it's
smaller
16. Yeah.
Yes,
camera.
it
So
was, yeah.
that POV is not as heavy. But I mean, still, it's a great idea, and it's not to downplay it. But that's just, when you start getting into the next 10 years, cameras are getting smaller, equipment's getting better. So naturally, people are like, okay, we can do these things. We can put it in the killer's perspective, because I mean that's like the one place as an audience member you don't want to be. So naturally
Yeah.
they start getting into this. Let's do this. Let's Carpenter got it from Bob Clark, and Bob Clark got it from what was his name who did Peeping Tom? Michael
Powell.
Powell and
Powell.
Plessinger, right?
Yeah,
Pressburger wasn't involved in that film. This is after they kind of broke up.
Got it.
Yeah, so I mean, it is this idea of how do we, obviously it's like, how do we do this idea? And it's almost like like you mentioned, Adam, it's this missing link of evolution of how you get there. And then, Panic Glide happened, and everybody's like, well, the best version was done, so we're good.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
any other sort of thoughts on this film?
no, I was going to say, speaking of feminism, that's a pretty good segue into a filmmaker who spent 0 seconds in his life thinking about feminism and probably ran towards the opposite direction.
You want to tell us about what we're watching then, Chris?
um, we pretend to appreciate high art in this show. I'm going to get us back to our roots here. This is going to be a heavy genre week. um, I say I appreciate, I pretend to enjoy high art. But at my core, I just want to see stuff blow up. And there's an Italian director who probably is the best at just saying yes to any script that comes his way, no matter how crazy it is. And he developed a little bit of a reputation for being the guy to go to for knockoffs. So there's a director called Bruno Mattei. He's criminally under-discussed as a genre film director. His movies are awesome. And the writer for a lot of his movies is Claudio Fragasso. I don't know if that's a household name, but he's the guy that ended up directing Troll 2.
Okay.
So I'll let you decide if that's a positive or a negative thing. But Troll 2 is I love it. But if you're gonna knock it, I think one of the common things that Claudio always says was that it was just a language barrier. A lot of times he didn't get why people think, he still to this day doesn't understand why people think it's so funny. Which shows where his head is at. He doesn't like when people laugh at that movie, which is absurd to me. But he was a studio writer in Italy and wrote some crazy knockoffs of Hollywood movies that were very successful. So Bruno Mattei and him were engaged in a lot of projects together. Bruno Mattei did Robo War, Cruel Jaws, and then my favorite one, which was just called Terminator 2, and somehow they could get away with it because it wasn't called T2.
Wonderful.
As well as Zombie 3. So that's kind of where Bruno Mattei played. But he made these movies highly, highly entertaining. I think, I don't know if there's going to be 2 hours worth of discussion at the end of these movies, but I'm hoping that y'all are at least extremely entertained. And I'm hoping that this is, for anybody who listens who's not familiar with Bruno Mattei, I think these are interesting entry points. because it's fairly early on in his career. He got hired to make a lot of women in prison movies. And right around the same time, he was making a lot of Native American movies and cowboy movies from the US, which probably had no business making, but they had there's a lot of violence that you can show in those movies. So they were good for the genre crowd, for the driving crowd, right? A lot of scalping and that kind of stuff. But the two movies that we're gonna watch for this show as a way of intro, one of them is just called Rats, Night of Terror, which if anybody wants to watch along, is going to be on Tubi in the US. And I think, Adam, did you find it on Prime?
iTunes, both of the ones I'm going to be watching are available to rent on iTunes.
Okay. Okay. And then the other one has several different titles. Hell of the Living Dead. It's also called Night of the Zombies. It's also called Virus. So you should be able to find it under one of those three. These are two movies from early in his career that I haven't seen. So I'm gonna be going in blind to these, although I'm familiar with his work. He also did jumping over a little bit, I should say he did an awesome action series called Strike Commando 1 and 2. So if anybody
Those
in
I've
the
heard of.
US,
Yeah, Severin put those out, didn't they?
yeah, Severin
Okay.
likes him. Severin put out Cruel Jaws too.
Okay.
I mean, Cruel Jaws as well, I should say. And yeah, between Blue Underground and Severin, they have a lot of his work out, and possibly Arrow. I don't know. But anyways,
We
good.
haven't got any
Really,
4K from him yet from Blue Underground, so maybe that's coming soon.
no. In fact, Night of the Zombies was just announced.
Oh, perfect. I didn't see that. Awesome. So yeah, he's getting his first 4K, I guess.
And then yeah, there's a double feature Blu-ray that had, just by total coincidence, had both of these two movies on it. Because as y'all know, my first choice was actually Rats, Night of Terror, and Strike Commando, but Strike Commando wasn't available to rent anywhere in Ireland, so we went up going with Hell of the Living Dead, which is in a double feature release from Blue Underground, and now they're getting separate 4K releases, I think.
Which is disappointing because looking at the plot of Strike Commando, it just seems like just crazy. So I do want to see it. Hopefully the rights holders will not censor me for much longer and I can see it.
It's fun. It's fun. Yeah, you need to get Tubi in Ireland just in general. It's a Sony thing. What did we discover when
Fox.
we were?
We said it was Fox. Crackle is Sony.
There we go. Yeah, Fox.
Yeah.
So certainly they have the money to do it. They need to get over there. But
Come
yeah,
on, Disney.
exactly. I really hope that y'all enjoy it, and I can't wait to talk about these movies. And what I might do, there's been some really cool books written about Bruno Mattei. Not a lot. He's but there's been some really interesting books. I might try to go see if I can find some excerpts and just give more
Was that
background
another
about his
book Severin put out? Was that one too? Because I know they put out books all the time.
Probably.
Yeah.
I have to go back and find out where it sits, but yeah, there's a few Bruno Mattei experts running around, just because his work is kind of interesting from like, if you think about studio directors, you don't really think about them making these kind of movies, but he would just say yes to anything. So he has some wild stuff in his filmography, but he gave.
And that's when we'll find out that he was the inspiration for that Jim Carrey movie. Just say yes to everything.
Just say yes. That's.
I was just gonna say it's the Italian Takashi Miike.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, that's not bad. That's not bad. Yeah. He, I think, yeah, you know what? That's actually not bad. Let's go with that for now. Miike probably goes a little bit more into taboo stuff. Miike loves to play with taboo. For some reason, he's very comfortable there.
But Bruno just likes money.
Bruno just wants to show stuff get blown up, people get their skin ripped off, and light sexual abuse, not heavy, never heavy.
Totally not taboo subjects right there.
All right. I can't wait. Yeah, thanks, y'all. This is a fun one.